Every NFL season, there's teams that come along and surprise everybody with how good they are and how completely unexpected it is. Last year, we had teams like the Buccaneers and the Houston Texans winning playoff games when no one expected them to do anything with their roster constructed going into the season. So in today's video, I want to talk about 5 candidates to absolutely surprise everybody in the 2024 season. But before we get into the video, I want to take a second to ask you to please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. It really helps us out. If you're a fan of the NFL, you'll love this channel as we release multiple NFL-related videos every Tuesday and Friday all year long. Now, let's get back to the video. So our first of 5 teams is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Arizona Cardinals were not that great in 2023. They had one of the worst records in the NFL, good enough for the 4th overall pick in the draft. But I think they have a lot of good things going for them that could make them a much more competitive team in 2024. First of all, you have Kyler Murray, who's going to be healthy for the majority of the season. Think what you will of Kyler Murray, but Kyler Murray is an upgrade over the other guys they were starting at quarterback last year. And last year when they did start Murray, it was only towards the end of the season, and he was coming off of a torn ACL, and he had never been able to integrate with the new offense because he was recovering from the torn ACL. This year, he'll have the offseason to integrate into the offense. He'll be able to be there the entire season. And he'll have a brand new weapon in Marvin Harrison Jr., who the Cardinals were able to select 4th overall. This guy's one of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen in a long time. And if he comes into the league every bit as good as we know he could be, this offense could be absolutely amazing with guys like Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., as well as Trey McBride, one of the most surprisingly good tight ends last year, and a really good running back in James Conner. If you're not a fan of James Conner, just remember, James Conner had 1,000 rushing yards last year, in spite only playing in 13 games. That's pretty damn good for any running back on any team, let alone for a team that was playing from behind most of the year. He did that on 5 yards per carry. It was actually incredible how good he was last year. So if he can keep it up, along with some of those other guys, this offense could be really good. And then moving to the defensive side of the ball, well, their head coach is Jonathan Gannon, a defensive specialist who we've seen based on how the Eagles regressed last year, how impactful he is at making a good defense. And the Cardinals were quite competitive last year thanks to a better than expected defense. They managed to beat some really good teams and be competitive against some other good teams. So don't be surprised if the Cardinals shock us all and compete for a playoff spot in 2024. Next up, we have the LA Chargers. And the Chargers are only a year removed from the 5th seed in a stacked AFC and a playoff appearance where they lost the Jacksonville Jaguars after a massive comeback that the Jaguars had in that game. But last year just was not the Chargers' year. It seemed that everything that could go wrong did go wrong for the Chargers. The Chargers weren't actually as bad as their record might indicate that was good enough for 5th worst in the league in 2023. Remember, Justin Herbert got injured in the latter part of last season. The Chargers finished 5-12, but they were 5-8 in games that Justin Herbert played in, and 5-7 in games that Justin Herbert started and finished. And if you look at those losses, they're not actually as bad as you might think. 6 of those 7 losses were to playoff teams, with the only loss not being to a playoff team being to the Tennessee Titans that they lost to in overtime. As well, 5 of those 7 losses came by 3 or less points. Not even 1 possession, 3 or less. That's how close this team was. If this team just has a few things break the other way, this team makes the playoffs in 2023. And yes, they've lost Mike Williams, but Mike Williams missed the majority of last season too. And they lost Keenan Allen, but they did draft Ladd McConkey. They've gotten a lot better on the offensive line, adding Joe Alt to go alongside of Rashawn Slater, having 2 excellent bookend tackles. And if a guy like Quentin Johnson can turn it on, this offense can actually be very effective. Beyond that, you've replaced Brandon Staley with Jim Harbaugh, a coach that we all know is absolutely elite and has shown to be elite both in the college level and the NFL level. Everywhere he's gone, he has done nothing but win. And so this team is absolutely a team that could surprise a lot of people and actually end up competing even in a stacked AFC. Our third team is the Minnesota Vikings, and the Vikings missed the playoffs in 2023 after finishing 13-4 in 2022. Now, the Vikings record in 2022 was a little bit misleading. They did finish 13-4, but they actually had a negative point difference because all their wins were in close games and all their losses were by massive blowouts. But even still, that's still an insane statistic to hear. I still can't even fully believe it. Either way, 2023 was a bit of a regression to the mean for the Vikings, where they started to not have as much luck as they did in 2022. But they also showed that they were still a very good team. The problem was they just had a lot of terrible luck, making up for the fact that they had a lot of ridiculous luck in 2022. Justin Jefferson goes down with a significant injury and misses about half the season. While he's gone and out, you have Kirk Cousins go down and miss the rest of the season. And once Justin Jefferson came back, you had TJ Hawkinson go down and miss the remainder of the season as well. The Vikings finished with 7 wins in 2023, in spite having 3 of their most important offensive pieces go down with significant injuries throughout the season. If you don't have that happen, this team could actually be significantly more competitive in 2023, and they could as well be in 2024. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, that's all well and good, but they lost Kirk Cousins in free agency. They lost Danielle Hunter in free agency. That's probably their most important players on both the offensive and defensive ends. How are they going to make up for that? Well, I think they've actually done a decent job in the offense of making up for it. Yes, there's a lot of question marks and there's a lot less certainty compared to what they had in 2023, but you replace Kirk Cousins with first-round pick quarterback J.J. McCarthy. If McCarthy can be a good quarterback, especially seeing as Cousins missed half the season last year, then the Vikings could still be very good and could actually have an improvement at quarterback over what they were starting in the latter half of the season. As for Danielle Hunter, yes, he walked to the Houston Texans in the offseason, but they signed Jonathan Greenard away from the Houston Texans to somewhat replace Danielle Hunter, as well as drafting another edge rusher, Dallas Turner, in the first round of the 2024 draft. Turner was widely considered to be one of, if not the best defensive player and edge rusher in the 2024 draft. And so adding him along with Greenard can absolutely replace the production of Danielle Hunter. And so if the Vikings additions can work out, you could have a situation where the Vikings are still very competitive and competing for a playoff spot in 2024. This isn't that crazy to say. I think some people do expect them to somewhat compete, but I think they could be a lot better than most people expect if things go right for them based on their incoming acquisitions. Now, our fourth team, I'll acknowledge, is a little bit of a stretch, but the New England Patriots, if things break right, could actually be a really good team in 2024. If you look at the last 9 games of the 2024 season for the New England Patriots, what you'll notice is that in 6 of those games, they allowed 20 or less points. That is elite defensive play. And yet in those 6 games, they had a 2-4 record. And they lost the other 3 games in that time, 2 of which were to the Bills and the Chiefs. This team's defense was elite in the second half of 2023, but the problem was their offense was absolutely anemic. So what did they do? Well, they got rid of Mac Jones, they got rid of Bailey Zappi, and they drafted 3rd overall Drake May. I don't know if Drake May is going to be the savior that the Patriots need, but the fact is he could be, and if this defense is any bit as good as they were last year, this team could all of a sudden be quite competitive as a close game defensive stalwart team that manages to pull some games here or there. Now, it's going to be quite difficult for the Patriots to be able to do this, as they do have a very difficult strength of schedule. And beyond that, they have lost Bill Belichick, who is a defensive-minded genius. But if Gerard Mayo is every bit as good of a defensive mind as Bill Belichick was, and Drake May ends up being a very good quarterback from the get-go, the Patriots could surprise a lot of people and actually put together a winning record in 2024. Though, that being said, I really hope they don't, because for the last 25 years, the Patriots have had enough success. They need some pain. As a Lions fan, we've had our fair share. It's your turn to take some pain, Patriots. It's your turn. And my final team that could be a surprise for the 2024 season is the New Orleans Saints. Now, I know it's a little bit weird given the Saints finished 9-8 last year and were in the playoff hunt until the very last game of the regular season last year. And so how do they fit in as a surprise team? Well, I do think they are still a surprise team. A lot of people have them as the 3rd-ranked team in the weakest division in football, being the NFC South, after the really good offseason that the Atlanta Falcons have had, and the fact that the Buccaneers won a playoff game last year and have returned that entire core that they had last year that won that playoff game. And so while I agree the New Orleans Saints are probably the 3rd best team in this division, it doesn't mean that they couldn't still compete for a playoff spot if things break right. Remember, they finished 9-8 last year. They're still in the putrid NFC South, so we'll have some easier games compared to some other teams in other divisions. And beyond that, last year, Derek Carr was awful. I mean, Derek Carr is a quarterback I like for the most part. I think he's a solid quarterback in the NFL and was for basically his entire time with the Las Vegas and Oakland Raiders. In fact, he was an MVP candidate in one of those seasons with the Raiders. And so his season with the Saints was just a really bad season for him. Now, this could be just the new normal for Derek Carr, or it could be a flash in the pan bad season for Derek Carr, and he's able to come around and be a really successful and effective quarterback in 2024. And so if Derek Carr takes that next step and improves back to the caliber he was with the Raiders, then the rest of this offense for the New Orleans Saints is pretty good. They have some good receiving weapons with guys like Rashid Shaheed as well as Chris Olave. They still got Alvin Kamara in the fold. They're improving their offensive line, picking a first-round offensive tackle, and their defense is still pretty solid. And so this is a team that could absolutely compete in the NFC South if Derek Carr is the quarterback that they brought him in to be. That is why the Saints paid him so much money to come in last offseason, because they knew if he is as good as he was with the Raiders, this is the best team in the NFC South. And that might still be the case even with what the Falcons have done in this offseason. And so this really just comes down to, is Derek Carr washed, or is he going to revert to back what he was with the Raiders? And if it's the latter, this team could absolutely surprise a lot of people and compete for a playoff spot and potentially win the division in 2024. That's it from a list of teams that could surprise in 2024. Chances are there's going to be a team that we don't have on this list that surprises us all still, but we'll have to wait for the regular season to see if that happens. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Help us out, help us grow. Either way, I'll see you all next time. Peace!